Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday, October 16th meeting of the Tuckahoe Village Board of Trustees. Will everyone please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Yes. Will the village clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Leo.
Present.
Trustee Alfasi.
Present.
Mayor Eklund.
I am here tonight. There are no appointments, presentations, or public hearings tonight. That's going to bring us to the adoption of our minutes. Pardon me. The approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 18th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor?
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. And that's going to bring us to our first opportunity to address the board on anything on tonight's agenda. Yes, sir. And the lousy call by the ref is not, the Jets game is not on the agenda, so we can't talk about that as much as I'd like to.
I won't talk about that. I want to talk about one of the resolutions.
Sure.
My name is Albert Stern, 14 Westview. What I'd like to talk about is tax certiorari's or tax rebates. One of your proposals or your resolutions is to give Peter Epstein about $24,000, and my suggestion is that you hold off. The reason I say that is I've been looking at these tax rebates that you've given over periods of time, and I'm rather concerned. The reason I'm concerned is last month there was about $257,000 of tax rebates you gave to different people. And I started looking at them and tried to find out what the history of this has been. And the history is not something that I was really expecting. Your budget for this year for rebates is $140,000. With 4 months into your fiscal year, you're now at $280-some thousand. You're way over your budget. So I looked at this and said, well, maybe this is an anomaly. Maybe last year or the year before, things were better. But in fact, they're just as bad. Every year since 2010, the budget has been way off. I actually will give you some numbers here. The budget in 2010 was $130,000. The actual charge was $600,000. In 2011, I don't actually have the number that you budgeted, but I know it was $92,000 for the actual. In 2012, it was $20,000, but the actual charge was $209,000. In 2013, the budget was $130,000, and it turned out to be $535,000. 2014, you almost reached it. You had a $130,000 budget and $173,000 actual charge. 2015, way off again. $130,000 with $273,000 actual charges. 2016, it was a disaster. You had a $130,000 budget, and it turned out to be $844,000. And last year, as I calculated, it was $140,000 you budgeted. You moved it up a little bit, and it turned out to actually be $133,000. So actually, last year was all right. But in general, since 2010, your budget has been for totaling since 2010, $910,000 budgeted, $2.86 million were the actual charge-offs. That's 24% of your annual budget. Since 2010, let's just talk about the last 3 years. The budget was $400,000. You actually had $1.25 million charge-offs, or 10% of the annual budget. So I wondered, who is getting this money? Why do they get this money? And what does it compare with any other local village? I can see who some of the people who got the money was the Consulate, the Tower Club, Sunrise Retirement, And the biggest developer in the village, Mr. Raffiani. In 2015, he got 73,000, 2016, 72,000, 2017, another 52,000. So he's approached $200,000 in the last 3 years he's received. I don't know why he's received it. I understand he has rentals, and he prices them very high, and then he says his revenue, he can't rent the apartments, so he claims, I don't know, some kind of going into losses or something of that approach. Even Mike Seminara's family got 30,000. My point about this is way different from our village, our neighborhood town, Eastchester, because Eastchester in this period is renting a fraction of these tax rebates. In fact, they've never come even close to Tuckahoe. And Eastchester is 3 times the size of Tuckahoe, yet they're running almost $2 million less since 2010. I talked to the assessor here, and he had no explanation for this. What he did say is that taxes in Tuckahoe are 65% higher than Eastchester's. So in other words, if you have a $10,000 tax bill in Eastchester, you have $16,500 of taxes in Tuckahoe. So it's very, very expensive. In fact, it's probably the most expensive village in Westchester County, maybe the whole United States. I'm not quite sure. So anyway, my question is, why is this happening, and why should it continue like this? I find that most of these are large entities. They're not like little homes or such. They're places like the Consulate or Raffiani, as I said. So my concern is something is not right. And my suggestion is that we bring the assessment board, who I've never seen up here, before the village to explain why these charges are so enormously high. Maybe you have a new have a new attorney, so maybe he could come there before, because I think every resident should understand how much this is costing them. It's costing them a lot of money. And maybe you can answer that now, or we can wait and see if you bring in the assessment board. That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I'll just a couple of items. First of all, the large tax certs, most of which you were referring to, we, as you know, we actually have tax cert counsel, John Burkhardt, who just retired, so we have a new tax cert attorney. Our tax cert attorney actually works for the town as well. So he works with Todd Hutton and the assessor. The village of Tuckahoe uses the town's assessor, the same assessor. Tax certs is just, it's challenging for all municipalities. And the only real way around getting your tax certs in order is to do a reval. Now, Bronxville, you didn't mention Bronxville, but they did a reval some years ago. It cost them between $250,000 and $500,000 to actually reevaluate everything.
Much more than that, over $1 million.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So they actually reassessed every single property in the village of Bronxville. And what that does is it takes somebody's property, it in all the conversations I've had, it kind of brings everything to an even keel. Some people who are very underassessed, they'll go up. Some people who are overassessed will go down. So it hurts some people, and it does not hurt others. For the village of Tuckahoe, since we share the same assessor, it really would be the only way for us to do a reval is if the town did a reval. But I sit on the board of the Municipal Officers Association, and we've talked about this many times. The only true way to do it is if the county did a reval. So if the county were to go ahead and step in and do a county-wide reval, and we all use that assessment role, that would absolutely cure the issue. on a long-term basis. But on a short-term basis, to talk about the dollar amounts that you're referring to, we have full faith in the tax cert counsel that we use. Not only is he negotiating the best deal for us, he doesn't just lay down and go ahead and accept what a particular developer is claiming that they feel their property value is. He's negotiating the best deal for us, and he works with the school too. It's a huge impact.
And he works
As-
with Eastchester, and Eastchester hasn't had a
No, the new tax cert attorney that we're using is working. The new one that we just hired
the old
last
one
month.
worked with Eastchester too, and Tuckahoe, correct?
I'm not sure. I don't.
I'm sure.
Yeah, John
you-
did?
you-
Okay, yep.
I'm really
Yeah,
quite sure.
I'm not so sure about the math that you.
Have they had a
were-
recount in there? Has Eastchester had a recount like Tuckahoe has not?
What do you mean a recount?
Not a recount, a recalculation.
A reval? No, the town. There has not been a reval
Well,
since the
then
50s.
this is exactly what I'm saying. For example, in 2013, Eastchester's searcher area was 88,000. We were 535,000. The following year, they were 47,000. We're at 173. The year after that, they were 43,000, and we're 273. So we're coming from equal grounds here, apples and apples.
Right. I thank you very much for the intel that you're giving. I need to fact check that a little bit with the town assessor. A year that we had a $535,000 tax cert payout, that with the town only having an $88,000, could it be because our fiscal year, theirs is on a calendar basis, ours is on a mid-year basis? I don't know. I think I'd have to actually take a look at that. I'm not disputing the fact that what you're saying is that we have a miserable problem, us and every municipality, with having to settle tax certs.
The other question is, how do you balance the budget when you're budgeting about, on average, about 115,000 a year for tax certs, and they're averaging about 350,000, and every year they're about the same. but
Right. And I'll
Only
explain
one
the
year they
process.
slightly, came under your budget last year. They're way over the budget this year.
So there's a process. So the process is when you're budgeting, when you're working on your budget, one of the phone calls that's made is to our tax cert counsel. We'll have a conversation with him and say, you know what do you think is coming down the pike? What do you expect? What should we be looking at to budget for tax certs? He will look at his schedule and give us his best estimate. We do not try to overburden the taxpayers with an excessive amount of tax cert money in our budget. We know that if there's going to be a $500,000 payout, like to the Gentry or to the Consulate, or the Tower Club, these are huge apartments that have had some very, very large, Riverview, extraordinarily large tax cert paybacks. Those are items that we always will, us and every other municipality, we borrow for those on a long-term basis.
Okay, I'm just saying, you're 3 months beyond your budget, and if you didn't know about it, I don't quite understand why, but you're more than double your budget already, a third into the year. So if you didn't know about it, I guess I could understand that.
No,
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
We're aware of it. It's an unfortunate reality on tax certs. So, but thank you for talking about
Well,
it tonight.
finally, do you think it's a good idea that we bring the assessment board in?
No, actually, because not the Assessment Review Board. They actually meet once a year, and their role is actually they sit in this room here, and they process the smaller applications. In other words, if you were to file a tax cert on your house for $500 or something like that, that's the work that they manage. It's the tax cert council that actually negotiates the numbers that you're talking about.
Who's on the tax cert council?
It's what's the name of our new council? It's our tax cert attorney that we use. That is the individual that I think that you really want to talk to.
So he determines the larger tax certs?
He makes
He negotiates.
He negotiates. He's a lawyer, so he negotiates with them over a period of a year. And
Okay, so maybe he should come in and explain it, because it's taking so much of the residents' income, taxes, to pay these. I think it would be
Mr.
a good
Stern?
idea to bring him in, and he's new, so maybe we should introduce it.
Mr. Sturt, when I first joined the board, I was concerned. I joined at the period of time where we had to pay out the $500,000, and I was very concerned about that. And the mayor brought in the Eastchester's assessor to kind of explain to us why this keeps on occurring. Because I, like you, was concerned. I said, why does this keep occurring? Why do we always have to pay back these large amounts of money? And if I recall the conversation correctly, what he basically said is that the way the taxes are assessed on a commercial or residential or large pieces of property, there's a delta that compounds rather than it compounds to the point where you're paying a ridiculous amount of money, and that's why these people are constantly challenging the assessment of their property. So there's nothing that he can do to change that unless, as the mayor indicated, that if the entire Eastchester and Tuckahoe does a total reevaluation of the property values.
Okay.
So the problem is the mechanism is in place that it doesn't allow.
Something unique about East Tuckahoe that makes their tax rebates so much larger than the larger village of
I don't know.
Eastchester.
I don't know. For example, if Eastchester, I know we have large. The ones we're talking about, we have large properties. These are units, buildings that have quite a few units. I'm not sure if Eastchester has the same quantity of those. I don't know, to be quite honest with you. But as Steve said, we'll investigate it and we'll let you know.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything that's on our agenda they would like to talk about? Okay. I'm going to move on to resolutions. And resolution number 1 is authorizing the retroactive street approval for the Tuckahoe annual
Homecoming
high
parade.
school homecoming parade that took place this past Friday, October 13th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor.
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Resolution number 2 is authorizing the sale of the surplus 2014 Ford Explorer to the highest bidder, Ian Sarami of 1210 Astoria Park South, for the amount of $15,200. Do I have, yeah, sure.
Could we just have a little bit of a briefing on how those are auctioned off, you know, what mechanism we use? I think we use eBay, right?
Sure. If you recall last month, this is one of the police vehicles that we surplus. So the board has to surplus, vote to surplus it, and then it needs to be advertised, and it goes on eBay. And what happens is that we believe that eBay is probably one of the best markets out there because it's one of the, it's worldwide. This was sold to someone in Astoria, but if you recall last year, we sold to people in Germany and things like that. So that goes out there. It's through the state bidding process where they allow you to use eBay and it meets all the requirements. We actually thought we were going to get around 13 to 14 for this vehicle and came up with 15 too, so thought that was a pretty good price.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor.
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Resolution number 3 is authorizing a tax certiorari settlement for Mark Epstein for the assessment years 2013 through 17 with a street address of 21 Columbus Avenue, Section 33, Block 2, Lot 28, in the amount of $24,418.27. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And this is what Mr. Stern was talking about earlier. It's just another tax cert that our tax cert council has negotiated for us.
Trustee Leo.
In favor.
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Resolution number 4 is authorizing a declaration of a sewer repair on an emergency basis exempt from bidding procedures by M. Zonzoni Pipeline Services in the approximate amount of $24,000. Do I have a motion?
Is this the Main Street?
Yeah.
We had all that traffic. If you don't mind, please.
Repair that happened on Main Street. But what's interesting about this one is, and why I don't have the exact amount is, Bronxville is interestingly enough doing a fair amount of sewer relining in their village right now. So what Zanzani is going to do is he's going to use the bid price that he bid, the price that he bid on the work in Bronxville, and he's going to use that price for this emergency work. So they've done a large quantity of sewer relining, so we're actually going to get a lot better pricing on what we
Right.
have here. So it was just fortunate that he was doing sewer relining in Bronxville and to hold that bid price for us.
Okay.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor?
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Resolution number 5 is authorizing the approval of vouchers in the amount of $539,832.28. Do I have a motion to pay those bills?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor?
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Resolution number 6 is to approve and authorize the closure of Warren Avenue for a Halloween party and a parade event organized by the Westchester Park Civic Association on October 31, Halloween. The route commencing at Marbledale Road and Lincoln Avenue to Stewart Avenue to Warren Avenue.
Do we have a time for this?
They normally do it, it's right up the street from my house, so I know they normally do it,
School?
yeah, oh, it's right, like immediately after school. It's still light out when they do it, I know
Okay.
that, so. Motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Leo.
In favor?
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. And resolution number 7 is not on our agenda. We've been in executive session tonight. We've actually been in meeting for the last couple of months on this, and I'll read this. It's a resolution authorizing the following salary modifications effective today, Monday, October 16th, for the following non-union, these are non-collective bargaining employees. The assistant building inspectors, salary is going to change to $33,090. The deputy village clerk is going to change to $40,000. The deputy village treasurer will change to $46,750. The intermediate clerk in the building department will change to $46,000. The court clerk will change to $60,000, and the intermediate clerk in the police department will change to $55,000. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And I'll have a little conversation. What we've done is, we've realized that for a while now that some of these non-union positions are falling far behind competitive municipalities. But more importantly, it's that a lot of our staff, we've reduced our quantity of staff, and we're asking some of our employees to do a lot more. And this is a way of making a small adjustment to go ahead and bump them up. There's still, actually, we've done an analysis. That's why we didn't do this during our budget hearing, and then the adoption of our budget. We wanted to get a better handle on what our other municipalities are doing, as well as doing an analysis from the county standpoint. These are civil service positions as to what the comparable salary should be, and so that's why we've made these adjustments.
So, I just wanted to comment, Mr. Mayor, that, I'm very proud of our staff. I'm very proud of the people who work for the Village of Tuckahoe, those individuals who are in non-union positions. Very often, they don't have a bargaining unit, obviously, to help them with increases in salary, with COLA allowances, et cetera. And they've been doing a fantastic job. You look around the community and look around the village, and to get them bumped up a little bit, especially when we have a good budget, a solid fund balance. This is a time to try to get their salaries up a little bit so they could be commensurate with the rest of the communities out there.
Very true. Pardon me. Roll call?
Trustee Leo.
In favor?
Trustee Alfasi.
In favor.
Mayor Eklund.
In favor. Pardon me. The next item is going to be a discussion. We want to talk a little bit about some of the changes we're going to be making to the village code. We started last month with adopting a new provision on fences, and one of the things that we started to, or have started to look at, and we've gotten an opinion from our village planner, is looking at finished basements. There's the FAR, which is called the floor area ratio calculation in single-family homes. So, Gary, maybe can you just give us a little bit of highlight on?
Sure. So, like you said, it's the floor area ratio. So basically, what that says is basically how much living space can I have in my house based on the size of my lot. And it kind of determines how big your house can be. Now, the way we have it now is in one-family homes, the finished basement, if I finish my basement, that's included in this floor area ratio. So that's included in this living space. What this law would do would be basically be to exclude that from the living space. So what happens is a lot of times people come in and they have an unfinished basement. They have two stories unfinished basement, and they come into the building department seeking to finish that basement. And the problem is, normally they can't, per our code, because the finished basement would count towards that FAR, which they're already probably at the max of. So this would allow them to go ahead and finish that basement without having to go seek relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I believe even this month there's a, or next month there'll be a application in for someone trying to finish their basement because they're at the max FAR for their house, so they need a variance to, for the FAR, and so they're seeking that variance. If this law passes, then they wouldn't have to come before the zoning board to seek a variance because that basement area would not be included in the FAR calculations.
And we also found out that the town does not include the basements in the FAR calculations, is that
I think a
correct?
lot of municipalities
Right.
do that.
And part of our conversation was that a lot of people we know have already finished their basements. So this is kind of an opportunity for them to, quote, legalize that space that's been finished and you know, make sure that it's been safely finished off.
That's exactly correct.
So it's an ongoing process. We're kind of hoping that we'll get some input from the community. Anybody has, wants to weigh in on this, they can email us, or we're going to have a public hearing on it. We have to have a public hearing before we adopt any changes to our village code. We're going to seek input from the planning board and the zoning board, but we're going to definitely move forward on taking a harder look at this.
And I just wanted to add that certainly all the requirements, if it did not, if someone wanted to finish their basement, for example, they would still have to come to the building department for the proper permits, the proper inspections to make sure everything is up to code, et cetera. So,
100% correct.
yeah, so safety is still going to be paramount. This is just a look at whether or not this makes sense to do so that individuals won't have to go before the planning board, before the zoning board, and get special permits to do, variances to do this, et cetera.
That's correct. Yeah, it would cut out the zoning board and looking at this, the basement people finishing their basements based on FAR.
But we also have to be very careful. We do not want, at least I don't want people, for example, who have a home and they have a finished basement, let's say with 700 square feet of livable space, and then we pass this law, and then all of a sudden they could take that 700 square feet and increase the size of their home accordingly. So we want to make sure we don't, the unintended consequences of certain laws. So we want to make sure that we want to provide relief where relief is needed, but I just don't want to have these monstrosities being built on small lots. So I want to be cognizant that, you know, we're careful in how we craft this law.
Clearly, there's pluses and minuses, and I
Yes.
believe the board acted prudently in having our planner look at this, because there are, like you said, there could be unintended consequences to this.
Right.
A new developer might be able to build a bigger house based on this.
Right.
We're not sure. I know the planner's looking.
Or
into
what's
that, so-
happening in other communities as property values increase, older homes get knocked down, larger homes get built. It changes the whole character of the village. So we have to be very careful about how we proceed.
I want to, take my hat off to Trustee Leo, because there was one or two scenarios that he thought of that I had not foreseen, and they're ones that have to be addressed. So, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our departmental reports to the board, and we're going to start with our Chief of Police, Chief Costanza.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Just a quick announcement, actually good news. On October 5th, Lieutenant Zarolnik and Lieutenant Rhoda attended a luncheon held by AAA out in Garden City, and once again, Tuckahoe won a gold award for their traffic safety programs. This is, I think, about the 15th or 16th year in a row that we've won this award. It's very competitive. They're competing against municipalities all throughout, from Albany south, including Long Island. And it's really through the hard work of the members of the police department that we were able to receive this award, not only through their traffic enforcement efforts, but also all of the educational programs they do throughout the year, their child safety seat program, which they do literally every single day. People are coming in and getting their car seats inspected or new car seats installed. And it's, you know, even just emphasizing that little aspect of what they do. It's hard work. They're out in all kinds of weather and the element, and never turn anybody away to do that. So congratulations to all the members of the police department who did work so very hard to receive this award. And like I said, we've been very fortunate to have received it several years in a row. And in addition, we received a separate award for going 43 years without a pedestrian fatality, which is, thank God for that, but it's pretty incredible for the volume of traffic that we have in the village, and we're thankful for that, and we continue to work hard and make sure that we continue with more years of no fatalities for pedestrians in our village.
It's got to be the traffic lights, right?
That's correct, trustee. And just in the same vein, Halloween's right around the corner. We will have extra officers out. We will be emphasizing safe routes for people to go out, our children to go out and trick or treat. We have educational handouts to give to any group that wants us, for a police officer, to attend one of their functions and speak about safety during Halloween night. So that's available to anybody that wants it. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, Chief. I don't see Mr. DeMarco here tonight, and I just want to say that thank you to Mr. DeMarco. It's the reason why we're all wearing pink tonight. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I want to thank everyone for showing their support. And nice tie, Chief. Didn't go unnoticed. Camille, anything? Gary, anything at all?
No, my end, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
David, anything?
The first is last week our auditors were here. I always want to mention that because Jim LaPerch and Ryan Rueda of the Treasury Department spent a lot of countless hours last week, a lot of late nights with them. I expect another fantastic, clean, good audit. I don't think there's going to be any problems. Hopefully in December or January, they'll be here to tell us what a good fiscal year we've had. And since Frank is not here, I just want to remind everyone, as you drive around the village, you already see leaf piles coming into play, and you already see leaf piles in the middle of roads or in roads. Want everyone to realize that they need to be in nice, clean piles, not blocking traffic. Get the sticks and all the other stuff out of it. It just slows it down. If you can just, bundle your sticks and put them in a different pile, take the rocks out of there. Any of that debris that's in there can potentially harm the equipment, but more importantly, it can potentially hurt someone. Those guys, it's very dangerous, those leaf blowers. So just as we're doing our leaves, just kind of remember that.
Good advice, thank you. Miscellaneous business, our next village board meeting is going to be on November 6th. We were going to have a residents meeting on November 15th. The location's going to be determined. I actually had a request. I sit on the ECAP advisory board, and they asked if we could have our meeting at ECAP's headquarters. So it's a suggestion. Maybe we'll consider that. That's going to bring us to our Board of Trustees member reports, and tonight we're going to start with Trustee Leo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As usual, the library has many programs, so bear with me, please. For children, holiday story time and craft with Miss Becca. That takes place on Saturday, November 4th at 11 a.m. New Canaan Nature Center, Native American Culture and Customs. That takes place on Tuesday, November 7th at 4 p.m. Bilingual story time. That will take place on November 16th at 11 a.m. That's for children 1 to 5 years old. Adventures with Concordia Conservatory, and that's for children from 0 to 5 years old. That will take place on Thursday, November 30th at 11 a.m. For teens, teen volunteering, give back and get back. That'll take place on Monday, November 13th at 4 p.m. and it's open to children ages 13 and up. SAT mock exam for 7th and 12th graders. That will take place on Saturday, November 18th at 10:30 to 2:30. Beaded earring workshop. That'll take place on Monday, November 20th at 4 p.m. And for adults, art talk, an invitation to a voyage. That'll take place on Friday, November 3rd at 4 p.m. Book club meeting, Rules of Civility by our Mortals. That will take place on Monday, November 13th at 6:30 p.m. and Thursday, November 16th at 1 p.m. Book signing, Peace in Pieces, told through poetry. That will take place on Wednesday, November 15th at 6:30 p.m. Local author Peggy Bellis will discuss her latest publication. healthful eating talk. That'll take place on Tuesday, November 21st at 4 p.m. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Trustee Alfasi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, I just wanted to give a couple of shout-outs. Today was Ursuline High School was their ring day for the class of 2018. It was class of 2018, the seniors, and there are a few that live right here in Tuckahoe that received that. So a shout-out goes to my daughter, Elena Alfasi. A shout-out goes to Ryan Walzer. And then from the town of Eastchester, we had Emily Maranga, Juliana Cirillo, Geraldine Goodman. It was Claire Fox and Lily Brancati. So, ladies, congratulations. I was there. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. The young ladies scream and holler and shout. If you haven't been to one, go to an Ursuline Ring Day ceremony. It's a feat to remember, and I wanted to give them all my best and best wishes. And equally, I wanted to give best wishes to a private first class, PFC, that's an E2, Caesar Delanto. The chief knows Caesar Delanto. Caesar is a member of our community. He was a graduate last year of Tuckahoe High School, and he enlisted in the Marines. He has just finished his Marine Corps boot camp, came back looking really, really sharp in his uniform, and he did so well. He did so well in boot camp that amongst 95 graduates, he was the only graduate who was promoted. They gave him another stripe to an E2. So a great shout out to Caesar. I invited him here tonight, but he's showing off his uniform, and proudly so to his family and relatives, so he couldn't make it. But thank you.
That's very nice. Thank you. I'm going to be brief tonight. A couple of things. First thing I want to mention that we are on the top of the second inning, and the score is 0-0 for anyone who's interested. We had two incredible events that occurred recently. The first is we had our Senior Bazaar, which occurred just this past weekend. It's the annual big fundraiser for our Tuckahoe seniors. I was down there, very well attended, so I hope they had a lot of success. I know they sold a lot of raffles and prizes. I didn't win any prizes this year. Normally I do. So, and then the other is, since our last meeting, we had an event in Tuckahoe that I've really never experienced anything like this before. We had the Feast of St. Padre Pio, and then in the middle of that was the Tuckahoe Music Festival, which probably anyone watching this is well aware of that. It was incredible. And, you know, first I want to give credit always to Mother Nature, because had it been pouring rain that night, it probably would have been me and everyone in this room standing there with umbrellas. But the weather was perfect. We had probably 5,000 people in that square. We actually had to close Main Street. We've never had to do that before. It was a safe event. It was just phenomenal. So I want to thank the Generoso Pope Foundation. They underwrite the cost of this, and we know it was very expensive. But to be able to provide that much fun for the residents in not just our community, but all our neighboring communities, it was a very special weekend. So I want to thank them very much. And with that, it's going to bring us to our second opportunity to address the board on anything at all. You'll be next, Mr. Laurie.
Jerry Frusciante, 4 Constant Drive, Tuckahoe, New York. First of all, I want to apologize to the mayor. I got his ear at the Tuckahoe Bazaar, and unfortunately that wasn't the time and place to bring up any subject. But he was more than willing to answer a few questions that I had, and one of those questions was the bridge. That has been my pet project ever since it has closed. Now, he explained to me that the bridge is coming down. He explained to me, maybe he can explain it more to the public, that the Metro Railroad is going to take the bridge down, but it's going to cost Tuckahoe. Now, I'd like to know, how much is it going to cost Tuckahoe, and where is this money going to be coming from?
Sure, I'm going to ask David on some of the finer points, but as I had mentioned to you, yes, Metro North, we entered into an agreement that is just about finalized. I know the attorneys have been going back and forth on the language in the agreement to protect us, to make sure that we're protected. And the money has come through, but we have actually bonded the money over last year or two, actually. We budgeted some, and then we bonded the money for the expense to go ahead and dismantle the bridge. And the bridge you're talking about is the footbridge that goes by the library over. It's been an abandoned bridge for many years that goes over towards where Parkway Oval is. So we're getting close, I know. I was just talking to David about this last week.
What's the cost gonna be?
I forget what the
I
total
believe the
cost.
estimate was about 187,000.
Okay.
And Metro North, we negotiated a cap in there of 200,000. They
Right.
originally didn't want a cap in there, but they did agree to put a cap in. We are still going back and forth with some language with regard to an indemnity. They're looking for us to indemnify them. So there is language going back and forth. I had sent the attorney for Metro North about a week and a half ago some language that we are proposing. I know she's bringing it to other council there to see if they've agreed upon that, but we don't have an answer on that yet. But I believe that was the last issue in the agreement.
So it's a work in progress. When you're doing business with Metro North, it doesn't seem to go too quickly, but we're almost there.
Is it possible that the village can get a grant from the county or the state on that project?
In taking the bridge down? I don't even think we explored that. I doubt it very much. I mean, if they're going to give us a grant, it's going to be to build or improve something. I don't think they would consider that. They would look at that as just, regular maintenance, something that we would be responsible for ourselves.
Okay, now, I also asked you about the noise from the train whistle
Yeah.
going by. Now, I think it's really unnecessary at 2 o'clock in the morning for them to blow their whistle. And I live at the consulate, and actually, it's right on top of me. Not only myself, but all those people that are living in the consulate. I knew before I bought in the consulate that the railroad was there, but I never thought it would be the noise from the whistle that would be interrupting a lot of things.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you, and we talked about this, it's been a pet peeve of Deputy Mayor Giordano, who's not here because he is at the Yankee Stadium. He actually called me earlier and said, look, I know I need to be at the board meeting, but I just got 2 tickets at my job. And I said, you know what? If I got 2 tickets, I'd be there tonight. So 0-0 is the score. It's the bottom of the second now. So anyway, that's where he is. But if he was here, he would tell you what I'm going to tell you, which is he has had many conversations with Metro North. We took this issue above our local area rep, Mark Maddox, to get an opinion on the Federal Railroad Act, because it's a federal requirement for them to go ahead and apply the horn at a certain distance, at a certain decibel level. So they assured us that they're operating that horn within the federal guidelines and restrictions. As I mentioned to you, sometimes I disagree with that. I wonder whether or not there may be somebody who's just having a bad day and he's really laying on that horn, because I hear it. I know you hear it on the Tuckahoe station, I guess. I hear it on the Crestwood station. So, yeah, but we've brought that issue up quite a bit with Metro North, yes.
First of all, I want to congratulate the police department on their awards, but I will also like to see, if possible, a sign put up by Bentley's stating no left turn at all between 7 and 7. I know there's a sign on top where the light is, but a lot of drivers don't see that. And unfortunately, there might be an accident there at one point. Because what they do is they make that turn to go to the parking lot rather than go all the way around. See? And the same thing with on the railroad side of Lake Avenue, where there is a sign that says right turn lane only. But I thought maybe possible, if possible, there could be a sign put up further up stating that it's only a right turn lane only. It does state on the
And you're talking
traffic
about
light, but
on Lake Avenue when you're approaching Main Street?
yeah, on Lake Avenue, making the making the right, going across the bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I've had, it seems to me that things have just happened to me, but unfortunately, the other day, I was almost creamed because somebody coming on that right lane came straight. And cutting off
Okay.
people that were,
Oh, no, that you were coming the other direction. Okay,
I
got
was
it.
coming,
Yep.
going toward the Bentleys and making the left.
Right, okay.
And the people making, coming on the right side, which were supposed to be going, making it right, came straight. Cutting off not only me, but the other people going to the way they're supposed to be going.
I see your point, actually. I've been in that same situation. I don't live in the neighborhood you do, but I know exactly what you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, and who makes up the traffic pattern in the village? Because I don't know if you have come into any situation, but Fisher Avenue and Main Street in Tuckahoe is almost becoming like the Long Island Expressway, with all those buildings going up. Now, again, I was stopped at the construction site where the new apartment house was going up. The light changed green on Main Street in Fairview. I made the light, but the next light on Main Street and Columbus Avenue turned red. So naturally, that backs up the traffic again. I feel that those lights are not synchronized so that it keeps the traffic moving.
They are actually synchronized. The problem is that when somebody hits the crosswalk button, it then changes one signal, which changes all the signals. So it's an issue that the trustee on my left, on your right, it's a pet peeve of his and well, actually all of ours. We've been talking about this for quite a while. It's and it really adds to the duration of how much time you're sitting in a car at a traffic light on Main Street. Yeah, it's
Unfortunately, Mr. DeMarco is not here, but I have to praise him and his crew for the work they have done, not only in snow removal, but in the decorating of all the trees and all the lamp posts and all the different places in Eastchester during Christmas, and especially during the summer, springtime when they plant the flowers and everything on the different parks and everything. I'd like to see Mr. DeMarco have his video of what his department has done in the past few years in projects that if the town were to give out to private contractors would cost the village thousands of hundreds of, not hundreds of dollars, but thousands of hundreds of dollars to be paid out to private contractors.
He actually made that presentation, I think, sometime.
He did, and
Yeah, did a great job.
unfortunately, I don't think there were many people here to see it, or if anybody saw it on television.
Right.
I happened to see it on television, and I wish he could do that
we
again.
could actually run that again on our cable channel, sure.
Because I had one time I asked him if he could possibly, if he had the equipment to take that bridge down. But unfortunately, circumstances, he couldn't be able to do it. But he has the men that could be capable of doing that because they did a fantastic job. I don't know if anybody have seen it on the playground at the Marbledale Road. And that's only one of the projects that his people have done.
He's done a fantastic job. We've made it a point of making sure that we give him the best employees and the best staff and the best tools, the best equipment. And Frank's background is he's in construction, and I always felt that you want somebody to run the infrastructure of your community, get somebody who's got that background. And he's done a really as you said, he's done a fantastic job.
There's been talk around the village about the children. Well, when I say children, I mean the students that go to the high school. They seem to be getting a bad name. Well, I attended a baseball game. I think it was during the springtime, at the Parkway over in Tuckahoe was playing, and they had a band there, and they had one of the students sang the Star Spangled Banner, and she did a fantastic job. As a Marine from the Korean War, naturally I stood up at attention and saluted and everything, and all the students got up and put their hands on their hearts. Next to me was a group of elderly people milling around talking. Now, that disturbed me very much. In fact, what happened after the Star Spangled Banner was sung and everything, this student, male student, came up to me, shook my hand and said, "Thank you for serving." Well, unfortunately, I couldn't get the name of the gal that sang the Star Spangled Banner and the student that shook my hand. But I want them, their parents to know that they're bringing their children up right. And I don't know if many of you, well, you did, Mr. Mayor, attended the Gold Star Mother ceremony on the bridge, and Bob Forster and his post did a fantastic job as always to honor the Gold Star Mothers. And it was a very touching ceremony because I was there also. And again, I want to thank them for what they've done for the village.
It was an excellent, all three of us were there. It was an excellent ceremony, and, not a dry eye there that morning when the
No,
women stood
there
up.
was not a dry
Yeah.
eye. And I want to say something. It was very well attended by the public,
Right.
which I was very happy to see, naturally being a veteran. Well, I think I've said my speech,
Thank you,
but I
Jerry.
hope
It's
it
good to
falls
talk to you.
upon
Mhm.
ears that are not deaf. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Laurie, I know. It's 3-0, Mr. Laurie. I know you're a Yankee fan.
Anthony
Yankees are
Laurie,
ahead, by the way.
123 Wallace Street. First of all, Steve, I want to say to that young Marine, God bless you. I wish we had more young men and women like that still willing to serve. I also want to say what this gentleman said, congratulate Mr. DeMarco on a wonderful job that he done. I got my sidewalk fixed from when a man stole the water, tore up my sidewalk, and it still cost me $150 to get my oil fill fixed. And the men from the DPW did a terrific job. I got to admit that sidewalk looks good. But I'm here tonight to talk about the monuments in our community. The fire department didn't send me, nor did the veterans or the American Legion. I came here on my own. I know Mr. Pope does a wonderful job on the Padre Pio feast and other ceremonies that he does. But it's time, and I know it's very hard to keep people off that monument when you got 5,000 or 2,000 or even 100 people there. It's time when we have a ceremony in that area, we have to cover that monument. It's getting deteriorated. It's getting messed up from juices, sodas, candies, hot dog, mustard. I went there after all that ceremony was over. That place is a mess. It's getting scratched. Even the plaque on the bridge, the Gold Star Mother Bridge plaque, is getting messed up. Now, I walk around the community a lot with my little grandson, pushing him in the carriage, hoping that I could lose a lot of this. But I pass by a lot of the monuments, and I look them over. And just the other day, I passed by the Vietnam-Korean monument. Someone brought their dog there and just parked it over there, and the mess is still there. Okay? And it's not only the veterans monuments that I'm getting angry about. Even the fire department volunteer monument. Mr. Mayor, you were there in May. We had a beautiful ceremony. We had a beautiful wreath laid in there, everything. I personally took a week to clean that place up, put the mulch in there, trim the trees, trim the bushes. After that ceremony was over, that was the first Sunday of May we had it. We had to have it because we had a conflict to meet the church services and everything else. Believe it or not, 3 days after we had that ceremony up there, I went up there just to look, to see how the wreath looked, We had a nice, beautiful wreath of yellow and red, and the wreath was all torn apart. I don't know if you ever heard this story. This happened back in May. The wreath was all torn apart. The flags that we placed around there were all ripped and thrown around the ground. When I walked around the monument, I found such a foul odor. I don't know if it was dog waste or human waste, but it was all over the monument. They didn't have the nerve to clean it up, so they took the flags that they ripped off the sticks and cleaned it up with the flags and then smeared it on the monument. I had to call the Eastchester police just to show them, put this on record. And what's disturbing is people don't know, even when they walk their dogs, that these monuments are considered sacred grounds. Now, if I was to bring my dog, which I don't have a dog or an animal, to anybody's cemetery and park it on one of their family relatives' graves, I think I would either be shot or hung. So what I'm trying to say, before our monuments do get messed up, please let's tell the public that these are sacred grounds. Let's get a tarp and cover the World War II monument when we have a big ceremony down there. Like I says, it's not just the war monuments. Like I said, I trimmed the trees up there a couple of weeks ago at the Fireman's Monument. Someone took the pine that coming out of that tree and wiped it all over the steps on there. I have to go clean that up this week. About 2 years ago, we spent over $7,000 repairing all the steps around that monument because people, at nighttime, we had the light fixed. The town fixed the light that was on the pole. Go there, have their little beer party or whatever other kind of party they want, and they trash the place out, which is a total sin. Our young students, I'm not blaming just the young students because people go there, have their lunch, which is not a bad thing because there's benches there, but clean your trash up. Don't dump on my property or don't dump on these monuments. It's a sin what's happening to these monuments. And in years to come, when I'm not here, or maybe none of us are here, people are going to say no one cared for these monuments. There was a monument in the paper the other day. I think it belonged in Boston or New Hampshire. It was an old World War I monument, deteriorated, broken all apart, and now they're wondering why no one has repaired it. So let's not get it that far. And as I say to the people, if you walk your dog or whatever animal you have, don't park them over on the monuments, please. And one last thing before I get off the monument subjects, just remember this is leaf season. Tell your gardeners, your homeowners, please, as a fire commissioner, don't pile your leaves against the fire hydrant. God forbid, if you have a fire, our men have to connect. And before they connect, they have to push all the leaves away or the branches and all the debris. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just quick, on the monument that's in Depot Square, you know, you talk about a way of covering it, I guess. My first question would be, the veterans would not have an issue if it was covered for an event.
Absolutely not.
Because it would, obviously, we would be, you know, if it's covered, you're not going to see the names on it.
I'm talking just cover it during
No,
a
I
big
understand.
ceremony
Right.
that's down there.
Right.
That's all.
So during any kind of an event, you know, we have 2 or 3 that are in Depot Square, just to cover that up on all 4 faces of that.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. I'll talk to Frank. Maybe there's, you know, a little bit of carpentry work we can do, a couple of pieces. that-
Even if we just get those blue tarps the carpenters use that cover a roof when they're repairing it in the event of a rain, just tie it up, cover it, and people will stay off of it. Even like, I think the Immaculate Conception had a walkathon a week after that, and I'm driving by with the trolley, and they were all on top of the monument with their sodas, their Starbucks coffees, and everything else.
In terms of some of the other, like the Vietnam Veterans Monument, is there some type of a plaque that the veterans could put in, like a little sign, you know, that maybe talks a little bit about don't disrespect that site?
I'm sure we
I don't
could
know
do
whether
that, but I
there's
mean,
something like that.
everybody has some common sense to know what a monument is and that you don't park anybody over there. Or I remember when they were building the Tower Club, the men were sitting all over that. And I got out of my car and I asked them if they would get off of that. Well, you don't want me to tell you what they called me because, you know, I was a real pain. But the men that were building the Tower Club, bricklayers, laborers, everybody, just was sitting all over it. And like I said, I asked them politely. I didn't get out of my car yelling or anything for them to not eat their lunch or have their coffee there. And I don't want to tell you anything else about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to speak to us? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Sarah Doris, 204 Dante. On Wednesday of last week, I attended the what it was the last scheduled community update meeting about the Brownfield project. And I just wanted to speak a little about what happened there because there were a few really important pieces of information that came out of that meeting. And I also wanted to ask that we could keep those meetings going since this project is ongoing and there is still quite a lot of work that has to be done. According to Mr. Kavanaugh, they have not completely remediated some of the material in Source Area 4. So there is still some places where they have not completely cleaned out the most, the big hot spots that they found. And work around the restaurant development area has not even started yet. So they're not even sure what's going to happen in that area. And these meetings really do help the community understand what's going on within that construction project and what they're finding, because they have continued to find contaminants within the soils, which is answering some of the questions of where the chemicals that were initially tested are coming from. So we want to make sure that we are kept informed ongoing of what this project, where this project is and what they've been finding within the soil as they're digging. The hotel plan seems to be almost done, but that restaurant piece hasn't really even been touched yet, so there probably will still be more findings at that point as well. And I think it's very important to keep the community updated on those things. The second important piece of information that came out of that was that the DEC has started its investigation on north and south P sites, which is the potential hazardous waste sites. There's been some radar detection done over top of the ground, and the drilling is going to begin on October 18th. And that was a message that was relayed by Mr. Kavanaugh from Kevin Carpenter of the DEC. So the fact that that testing is beginning now, we know there's not much to tell the community at this point until those test results do come back. But I implore you and encourage you to ensure that the community is involved from the get-go as soon as those test results do come in, so that we don't run into the same situation that we had before with the Brownfield, where not enough of the community knew exactly what was going on with the project. So if there is a community forum, as soon as those test results are out, to make the community aware of what's going on and what the DEC's plans are, what the status of that, those P sites is going to be, that would be very helpful.
Do you get our emails? Are you on the email blast from the village? Okay, yeah, because what we'll do is we take all information that we get from the DEC and we post it on our website. There's so much data on there, but if you can look at the most recent, you know, that's going to definitely be the location where you'd find any reports that we get. We'll put them up there the same day.
Great. I think what's most helpful about those meetings specifically is a layperson isn't necessarily going to understand what those numbers are, what they are in context to other things. So the ability to ask questions to the experts and help them understand those numbers is really important. I think it's great that the information is out there for the community, but most people aren't really going to be able to put it into context or understand exactly what it means. We found that in some of the numbers that we saw previously in testing that came out, people got very, very concerned about a certain number, but then once the question was posed to someone who knew a little bit more about it and could put it into context, it does really help people understand, you know, what they're looking at. So
Sure.
It's very helpful.
Good.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to us? Yes, sir.
Hello, Mike Dardano, 62 Chestnut Street, Tuckahoe. Mayor, I saw you boogieing at the event, the YMCA thing. I actually got a picture of that, so I was sending it to you. Yeah, I caught you. You were doing the hand thing.
Well, I was trying anyway.
Great event, by the way. Also, thank you, I think I said this last year, thank you again for wearing pink. My wife's a breast cancer survivor, and this month I'm working on fundraisers for triple negative breast cancer and for Support Connection, which helps counsel people that have breast cancer, so thank you.
And my mother-in-law too, 1 year disease-free actually,
That's
right
great.
about
That's
now.
very good. That's excellent. Ongoing struggle. Just to reiterate a little bit about what Sarah said, and of course I don't like to repeat things, so I'm going to talk a little different, but I do want to say one thing. I think that Bill Cadavan's meeting last week was probably arguably one of the best ones we've ever had. It was clear, it was concise, it was a lot of good stuff in there, and I felt like I really, not that the other ones weren't, it's just that I felt like I really knew a lot more about what was going on. Saturday, Dr. Hughes was brought down by the Bronxville, Greater Bronxville Indivisible, they're a advocacy group. His presentation was great too, because what he did was he didn't throw all the chemicals out at us, just kept it at a few things. It was very informative. So I think Sarah's point is this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I'm going to do is reach out to people to talk to Carpenter to convince him of why this is important. There was an article that came out in April in the Journal News that said that all the bad stuff was cleaned. This was in April in the Journal News. Tainted soil cleared from Tuckahoe hotel site. However, SA4, that's the site that she was talking, that's the part of it's a pretty big hole. There's still, pill bottles in there, and there's Freon and whatnot that's still in there. Now, it's not that that's like earth-shattering or evil or demonic that it's there, but it's just a miscommunication. So, and that was coming from the PR person for Weinberg. So I'm not worried about the brownfield as much per se, because that's going to be what it is, and we're watching that. I mean, there's issues, but that's not for here. But the outside, the Marbledale Road situation, beyond that, I think it's critical. I think it would make sense, even if we don't have a date of when those tests will be done, but to at least start the wheels turning, talking to Eastchester, Bronxville, Tuckahoe residents, maybe the businesses on Marbledale Road, and perhaps even Pelham, because Pelham also dumped in there, and just let them know what's up and say, we'd like to get a group together, maybe at the community center. Maybe it's in 2 months, but kind of plan a date, and also that might push the DEC a little to get this stuff going, and just have a dialogue so that we don't repeat the errors we did the last time. The EPA and the DEC say it's critical to get trust from day one. So because these P sites are going to have a lot of, I'm sure, wonderful stuff in them, let's not go through the hysteria that we had on some residents don't understand or whatever. We know a lot about this now. We know what went on with MediRay. We know there's a lot of TCE and PCE right in between where the brewery is and where Phoenix Gym is. That's probably one of the reasons why they're not doing anything with the restaurant yet, because they got to deal with that. But be that as it may, I think it makes sense. Start the dialogue going. We've got plenty of people that can, I can talk to people on the Ridge in Tuckahoe, whatever. I just think it makes sense to do that. And even if it's something that we're going to talk about, maybe it doesn't start until January, but let's pick a date, and whatever it is, January 16th or something, and aim for that, and then bring the DEC down here, and then we can ask the tough questions of them of what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah, I would say that you're correct in kind of drawing a distinction between the brownfield site, which is a private property owner, went through his whole process, his brownfield cleaner process, and now this is the P, called P stands for potential. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and that's the job of the DEC.
Correct.
So that whole issue will be driven by the DEC. It's not driven by, Bill Wynn Development, and it has nothing to do with them. This is a state issue. So we absolutely will be keeping in touch with them. They are actually coming in, they're monitoring all this, but they're also looking where they're going to hit the price tag, So, don't be surprised if a lot of municipalities are going to be a little gun shy. Not saying that we're not going to have meetings, by the way, but that they're a little bit gun shy as to how much input they're going to have because, Pelham may not realize they're on the hook for an enormous amount of money. Bronxville, Eastchester, Tuckahoe is probably the smallest municipality who might have contributed any kind of municipal waste in the landfill at that time. So, these are other municipalities that, will certainly make the request of the DEC to keep us informed, and I absolutely agree with you. It's their job to they need to do a much better job of establishing a good PR message for what's going on. Not public relations to be a cheerleader, but PR to inform us and the residents as to exactly what they're doing and what's going on. That's key. That's
Because
key.
those affidavits that were used last year that mention Con Edison and New York Tel, and that information is going to be critical as we look for responsible parties. The goal here with this Peace site investigation is to minimize our exposure. I mean, none of us, I didn't dump it, you didn't dump it, you didn't try. So my point is that so there's PCBs in there, so that's usually from transformers, which could be Con Ed. So that sort of information, what other information, maybe the fire department has information about what they saw back in whatever, which might help. Well, we saw some equipment on fire, and maybe it was a transformer, it was telephone equipment. That kind of thing. The pill bottles, which would be Borough's Welcome. Revlon, I know, has already had someone over there, and they've done the homina. But you know what? Too bad. That's what we want to find out and minimize. So I think as a community, at least in Tuckahoe, we want to minimize our exposure. So the more information we know, the more information we can get, asking people, do you have any information, any photographs of anything that you saw at that time? Because this is not about the brownfield, this is about the Peace sites. And they can supply that. That's great. Joe Marinello's affidavit, D'Ambrosia's affidavit, that helps. The chemicals that are in there, the oil drum that I found last year that's racing fuel, that company is from San Antonio or whatever in Texas. And so that drum could be traced. The company still exists. That company could tell us who they sold it to in Tuckahoe. And that drum was dumped illegally in the southern part of the Peace site, and we should go after those people. So that's what I mean by opening this all up, because this isn't like the brownfield. I think it's going to benefit everyone and hopefully reduce the bill, so to speak,
Right.
for that, which I think is key.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jessica Ciaffoletti, 338 Columbus Avenue. I just want to echo what Mike and Sarah was saying, and I think Mike actually asked this as well, and I've asked it a couple of times. Is there any way that you can invite Kevin Carpenter back here to, again, inform the public of what's happening in terms of the P sites? Or
Sure. Yeah, David speaks to him probably.
As I told Mike at our meeting on Wednesday night, the DEC doesn't often come to meetings. I mean, it was rare that the DEC came down for the brownfield meeting, but the DEC will come down. It's just premature. We need to kind of space out. We can ask the DEC to come down every week. They're not going to do it. But if we can ask them to come down at certain intervals, they would definitely do that. And Kevin's absolutely willing to do that. However, drilling has not started on the main portion of even doing the testing. So as you know how long it takes someone to do the borings, to do the testing, to get the testing back, to get the validated testing, you know how it's been with this project. It takes it takes months to do that, some of the stuff. So that's where we are right now, is where we don't have anything to actually give to the public in regards to testing right now. So we wanted to wait until that point where we actually had something concrete, and instead of just being speculative on a lot of this stuff,
Right. Yeah,
let's have something concrete about what's there, and then what's the DEC plan, or what is our plan, and how do we come together. So Kevin is definitely willing to come down. It's just, we just have to figure out what is the best point, because I don't want Kevin to come down today and then not be able to come down from Albany again for another year or 2 years, because as we know that the DEC it's difficult for them to come down.
Okay, great. Yeah, so maybe when the tests come back and the information is available,
Absolutely.
you can come and
Yeah.
answer questions.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just to answer your question too. It's always our intention to do that. It's never not been.
Yeah, no, I wasn't referring to that. I just wanted to make sure that he was available, because I know he was available 2 summers ago.
Right.
So
Right.
if we can have it again at this point, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Hi, Melba Caliano, Westview. I wanted to touch on some of the topics that you did have on your agenda tonight, Mayor. The first thing I wanted to touch on that Commissioner Leo, Trustee Leo seemed to have touched on as well is on the FAR issue. Presumably it's going to come before my planning board. I imagine I'll have some more thoughts at that point. But the superficial review that I've done already suggests that, and human nature suggests that if you exclude the basement calculations, what you might find, as I believe Trustee Leo referred to, is in the future, you're going to see people asking for larger buildings on the same footprint. And I would strongly advise that option be limited as much as possible. I think the scale, first of all, FAR is created just to create, one of the purposes of it is to create harmony and a unified scale in a village, in a town, in a location. And to open that box that might allow someone to say, oh, let's exclude it, therefore I get basically more bulk, which is what it really boils down to. And I can build taller or wider is not something I would want to see. I wouldn't recommend it. I can tell you that right now. I hadn't even thought of the option that people knock down homes, but of course they do, and then they could arguably claim some grandfathered option to utilize that exclusion and then build larger. With all due respect to the real estate market and that people seem to want larger spaces, the fact is the scale of Tuckahoe is still village, still small. I think we need to respect that scale. At the risk perhaps of losing housing sales, but then that's what sells Tuckahoe, the smaller scale, the village feel, and to have these expanded structures does not add to that. It creates a dissonance, a visual dissonance, and frankly maybe even a tax dissonance at a certain point in a slightly different vein that I would like to recommend that we avoid those possibilities as much as possible, taking into account that human nature will always try to exceed the rules for whatever reason, and variances will always exist. But those are my preliminary thoughts on the FAR issue that you've got going at this point. I would also, I notice yours is addressed to single-family homes. I happen to just really superficially skim the Scarsdale Village Code. They have an exclusion for basements as well, but the way I read it, they call it their Residence A zoning district. That seems to include not homes per se, but basically their downtown. Now, I may have misread it. I didn't read through all of it, but my point is, where it does exist in one of our neighboring communities, it seems to be restricted to a certain area of town. I'm not sure what the purpose of this one is for us in Tuckahoe at the moment, but Scarsdale seems to be limiting theirs, and it doesn't appear, as I read it, to include single-family homes. Should my read reveal something differently, I would probably.
So you think they only limit it just to a certain geography in their community? Not.
They are limiting it basically based on, well, actually they are. They're basically, it's related to lot size.
Mm-hmm.
And a proportional, and a relationship, a ratio to the lot size.
Yep.
So you're going to see, smaller lots versus all the way up to larger lots. But the first subsection that they do mention happens to refer to an assortment of buildings that tell me they're community structures. Schools, the fire station, community services kind of buildings. The second sets and the third subsets start to include homes. So statutory construction is typically the primary is listed first. So that's telling me that they're focusing on their I guess arguably their commercial district, and that's where it's excluded. And then they very gingerly and carefully head up to their residential districts. So you're probably going to see a real tapering off toward the residential districts. Very little in Scarsdale, even now, looks out of scale, although there are some pieces of work there.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents on the FAR for the moment. I imagine it'll be discussed in more detail, and I'll have other thoughts as a member of the planning board. Thought of the Broken Bow proposal that's before the planning board, and I'm speaking purely for myself on that. I know it's been batted about with the zoning board, and I believe the public hearings are still open for them as well as the planning board. I'm not sure that a lot of people in the village know about it. I would like to suggest that it be advertised a little more frankly, in more places. I know it's really not on the website. It's on the agenda, yes. It's on the planning agenda, yes. I would like to suggest that it be plastered literally as a banner, and maybe you could have a running banner scroll at the bottom or the top or the side of the screen that says, you know, this is the latest thing going on in the village with zoning and planning. Because, and why do I bring this up? I bring it up because the rezone in 2009, I happen to know was technically advertised appropriately and validly. The fact that I know that doesn't change the fact that other people in the village didn't seem to hear about it, know about it, make the effort to learn. I happen to make the effort. That maybe is, it's a different kind of person. The point being, I'd like to see it advertised better. I'd even suggest, and I'm not even sure we could do a referendum on this, but I'd even consider throwing it out as a referendum for that type of a construct where you've got somebody who wants to put a food truck on their own essentially private property. Advertise it in the display cases here, on your floor, outside the clerk's office. My concern is that a year from now, somebody's going to walk up to somebody on the planning and zoning board and say, did you know about this? Did you hear about this? When did we learn about this? I cannot tell you how many times I heard that about the rezone, about the hotel, about the brownfield. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I'd have paid a few debts off. My point is, you can advertise physically, banners on the wall. You can run a scroll on the website even for a week or two. Just do something more than is out there right now.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. At one point years ago, we actually purchased signs that they set out. There's going to be an application. Like I work in Yonkers, and I see, oh my goodness, every corner in the downtown. Yeah, do we do that for zoning and planning? Or?
I think we did that a short period of time for zoning.
I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I recall Bill doing it for a short period of time. I'm not sure what happened.
Those really, to your
Passed
point,
by the
what you're
property.
saying. Yeah, I passed by the property and I stopped sitting at a light on Ashburton Avenue in Yonkers heading over, and I'm like looking at it. I was like, oh yeah, there's a planning board meeting about this particular property next Wednesday.
I think it's the variance signs they put up.
Yeah, that's
They put up the variance signs.
Just
by
for
law,
zoning.
Yeah, and then they send out the notice to, I think, 200 feet, the people
Right,
within
correct.
200 feet by certain.
I'm
Yeah.
talking beyond 200.
I know.
Where people might be expected to congregate, or certainly somewhere else in Village Hall besides just a website.
I agree with you, Melba, but
Gary, let me interrupt. Yeah, let me interrupt because, Melba, I'm not saying it's a bad suggestion at all. I'm just concerned about. I think the notice requirements are statutory, and I don't know if we as the village have the ability to. Maybe we do. Maybe we do have the ability to require more than the statutory requirement. I'm not sure.
Requirement is the minimum requirement. I've never seen a law that says you advertise too much. I've never seen a law that says you gave.
No, Melba, you're missing the point. The point is a statutory requirement is a statutory requirement. If you want to exceed it, then you have to exceed it by a new statute. If you want to require more than what's current, you have to require it by a new statute. Do we agree on that?
No, I wouldn't. I just told you that.
Okay, so then how do you enforce that? How do you make that happen?
How do I make what happen? Posting more things on the bulletin
Requiring the applicant.
on the community bulletin board that's over the.
Yeah, I think every application is in the box outside.
It is.
Yeah.
Melba, as I was going to say, we have to figure out where we draw the line, which applications are important, which aren't important. They're all important. So do we advertise them all? Do we?
FAR is important.
I think
because it's going to be village-wide. The Broken Bow is just as important as the Brownfield because it's going to affect people that are sitting right up there on the ridge. Probably quite a few don't know that it's under discussion at this time.
Well, and I think also Deputy Mayor Giordano always says which applications are going to be pending before the zoning and planning board. He usually gives that report. He's not here tonight. But I think it's important, like you said, for people to listen, to this meeting, to listen to the planning, to listen to the zoning. It's on the website. Broken Bow's already given a presentation both to the zoning and planning board last month. So the public should go watch those meetings and see what they're doing. It's important.
If we wanted to require those sandwich signs or those signs that we had years ago, that I know we started that, would we have to do that by law, or is that, I mean, how would we implement that as a requirement? Because I don't think that's a bad thing, to be able to, every application, there's a sign. Let's say I wanted to get a variance for something on my house, there'd be a sign. I know it's always for the zoning, but even for the planning board. It's really an announcement of the meeting. So this way, as I'm driving by, I'd say, oh, there's a meeting, so let me go to the planning board meeting. It's really
Would you
nothing.
put it at the property where they're gonna have the
It's
meeting, or would
normally
you
on the
put it in the
property.
village somewhere?
No,
I don't know what
no,
you're.
it's
Typically,
always
it's on the
attached to
property.
To the property. I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
Oh,
are
yeah.
you proposing to put it in the village somewhere or to the property?
No, to the
definitely just
property.
on the property. Because that's really,
I think you're making an awful lot out of something that's very simple to resolve. This is a tiny village.
Yeah,
Isn't even a
we c-
square mile.
We could add a sign.
Put it at the entrance to
Okay.
every you got political signs left, right, and center here right now, okay? And you know that I emailed you that there's a few that are outside the requirements for those signs. So if we've got all those political signs up, we can certainly have signs that let more people know to participate, to offer comment. I don't like the idea that I hear a year and a half later, when were we told about this? You know as well as I do that that is what you hear. I don't see why it's so hard to post 3 or 4 more signs in obvious places where people congregate in traffic. You're sitting at a light at Depot Square. Do I think you should put it there? Do I know
No.
you can put it there? No. Should you think about putting it there? That's
No.
a great place, because people are sitting there at a light being bored, waiting for 30, 40 seconds, 2 minutes. They can be reading the notice. This is common sense. The law is common sense. Let's not make it more complicated than it needs to be. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Do I think people have a responsibility to go look? Yes, I do. You know very well I know that. But can I train them to start looking by putting signs in more obvious places? I'm willing to do that. I think we should be willing to do that. I don't see why not. Because then if you have your disagreements a year and a half later, you can say, there was notice. There was notice everywhere. Because that's what I've said to people for the last 3 years. There was notice for the rezone. And it fell on deaf ears. And did they have a responsibility to come and listen? Yes, they did. But would it have killed anybody to put up a few more signs? And the answer to that is no. So that's that on that topic. The other thing is, I alluded to it, political signs. I did email Gary today. I emailed the building department. As a result of some personal experience campaigning last year, I've reviewed the signs ordinance, and I can tell you I know what size signs should be on residential lawns, and I've seen some signs that far exceed those dimensions. Somebody should be talking to some of those homeowners, should be the building department. The signs ordinance also says that you can only have one sign for one topic, basically, is what it boils down to. One sign for one candidate, one sign for one slate. You can't have 2 for the same. You can have, if you have 10 candidates running, you can have 10 different signs, but you can't have 3 for one candidate. So I've seen that example already in the village, and that should be addressed, because that's in violation of our code. I realize it's not the kind of violation that people are gonna get fined for per se, but they're not in compliance with the code. If we've got a code, people should be in compliance with it. That's what I'm saying. So those are my 3 things.
Thank you. All right, well, the score is 3-0 still. So with there being no other business tonight, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Till next time, Tucko, have a very good evening, and let's go Yankees. Good luck.